Welcome, thrill seekers, to a world of spine-chilling tales and hair-raising adventures. Gather around for a frightful journey into the unknown as we delve deep into the realm of scary stories. Buckle up, hold on tight, and get ready to experience a rush of terror like never before. The old manor had been abandoned for years, and the townspeople whispered that it was cursed. The trees around it were gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The house itself was made of crumbling stone, and the windows were boarded up tight. But despite its eerie appearance, the manor had always held a certain allure for Sarah. Sarah had grown up in the small town at the foot of the hill where the manor stood. As a child, she would often stare up at the old house, imagining what secrets it might hold. And as she grew older, that curiosity only intensified. She would spend hours scouring the town's archives, looking for any information she could find about the manor's past. One day, Sarah found a reference to the manor in an old diary. The diary belonged to a woman who had lived in the town over a century ago, and it detailed some of the strange occurrences that had taken place in the manor. According to the diary, the manor had been built by a wealthy family in the early 1800s. But after a series of mysterious deaths, the family had fled the house, leaving it to fall into disrepair. Sarah was fascinated by the diary's account of the manor's dark past. She couldn't resist the temptation to explore the house for herself. She waited until midnight, when the moon was high in the sky, and set out on the long hike up the hill to the manor. As she approached the house, she felt a sense of foreboding wash over her. The air was thick and heavy, and she could hear the rustling of leaves in the wind. But Sarah pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the old manor. She pushed aside the boards covering one of the windows and slipped inside. The inside of the manor was even more decrepit than the outside. The floors creaked beneath her feet, and the walls were covered in layers of peeling wallpaper. But despite its dilapidated state, the house had a strange energy to it. It was as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets. As Sarah made her way through the house, she began to feel as though she was being watched. She tried to shake off the feeling, telling herself that it was just her imagination. But as she turned a corner, she caught sight of a figure standing at the end of the hall. The figure was tall and shadowy, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce right through Sarah's soul. She froze, unsure of what to do. But then the figure began to move towards her, its footsteps echoing loudly in the empty house. Sarah turned and ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the figure's breath on her neck, its cold fingers reaching out to grab her. But just as she thought it was all over, she burst through the front door and into the night air. Gasping for breath, Sarah looked back at the manor. She could see the figure standing in the doorway, watching her with those glowing eyes. And she knew then that she had uncovered something far more sinister than she had ever imagined. Over the next few days, Sarah became obsessed with the manor. She spent hours researching its history, poring over old documents and maps. She even went back to the house, determined to get a closer look at the figure she had seen. But each time she returned to the manor, the feeling of unease grew stronger. The walls seemed to be closing in on her, and the whispers she had heard on her first visit grew louder and more insistent. One night, Sarah decided to spend the night in the manor. She wanted to know once and for all what secrets it. As soon as Emma entered the old manor, she felt an eerie presence surrounding her. It was as if the walls of the manor were closing in on her, and the air had become thick with an unsettling energy. The antique furnishings and decorations that once seemed charming now appeared to be grotesque, with their darkened and worn-out surfaces. The old paintings on the walls showed strange figures and distorted faces, which seemed to move and stare back at her. Emma had been hired by the owner of the manor to clean and organize the house before it was put up for sale. But as she began to clean, she realized that something was not right about the old house. Every corner of the house had a feeling of dread that seemed to be growing stronger with each passing moment. As she went about her work, Emma heard whispers and voices that seemed to be coming from behind the walls. Sometimes she thought she saw a shadowy figure lurking in the corner of her eye, but when she turned to look, nothing was there. The temperature in the house dropped inexplicably, and the air felt thick and oppressive. One night, Emma decided to stay in the manor to finish her work. As she was cleaning the dusty living room, she heard a creaking noise coming from the hallway. She froze in terror, listening as the footsteps drew closer. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the doorway, a dark, shadowy figure that appeared to be wearing a top hat and a long coat. Emma tried to scream, but her voice was trapped in her throat. She tried to run, but her legs felt like they were made of stone. The figure stopped in front of her, and she could feel its presence, even though it didn't have a physical form. "Who are you?" Emma managed to whisper. The figure didn't answer, but instead, it extended its hand towards her. In the palm of its hand, Emma could see a dark, twisted reflection of herself. She felt herself being pulled towards the figure, as if by some unseen force. She tried to fight against it, but it was no use. She was being dragged towards the figure, and the reflection in its hand grew larger and more distorted. Suddenly, the figure vanished, and Emma fell to the ground, gasping for breath. She looked around, but there was no one there. The manor was silent once again. Emma knew that she had to leave the manor as soon as possible. She gathered her things and hurried out of the house. But as she was leaving, she noticed something strange. The manor, which had been old and decrepit before, now appeared to be newly restored and gleaming in the moonlight. Emma blinked, and the manor was once again old and worn out. Emma stumbled away from the manor, feeling as if she had been under some sort of spell. She knew that she would never be able to forget the sinister secret of the old manor and the dark reflection that had almost claimed her soul. As the night draws to a close, we bid farewell to the terrors that haunted us and the spine-tingling tales that kept us on the edge of our seats. Remember, the darkness may linger, but the dawn always brings a new light. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never stop exploring the mysteries of the unknown.